All right, Jake,
There we go.
no longer a co-host. You are just the host now.
Great. Can you see that?
Yeah. So tell us about you. Tell us about Lost, and then I think obviously you'll be segueing into is it Wayward?
Wayward. Yep.
Okay.
My favorite type of traveling is the type where you don't have a set agenda and you don't have a route to follow. So that's where the name came from.
Both Lost and Wayward.
Both of them. Yep.
Pay homage to that mode of travel.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me here. Thanks for the platform. I'm excited to just talk about what we're up to and an idea that we have that's maybe a unique business model that I think most of the people, definitely both of you on this call now, and most people that are viewing might have more insight into. A little bit of background on me. So I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I'm an engineer by trade and an entrepreneur by heart. I've had kind of a lot of different small business ideas and different things that we've tried out over the years. I worked in healthcare for a while, and then I worked for a couple different tech companies, one in the Bay Area, one in Chicago. And I always just love sharing business ideas, hearing people's business ideas. I always have a lot of respect for people that go out and try to build something from scratch. And whether it's a success or a failure, I think there's a lot to be learned there. So I run a company called Lost Travel. Lost Corporation. Lost Travel is one of our brands. Wayward is another brand. I'll get into that. I won't spend a ton of time around, what we do as a business, but our whole company is centered around travel. Adventure travel is kind of the main bucket. And the reason I get so excited about it is just, I think, and most people probably listening to this can relate that traveling, it brings out a lot. Personally, there's a lot of personal growth when you travel. It exposes people to different cultures, different parts of the world. It really does teach you a lot. And it inspires more people to get out there. I've definitely seen this myself, taking trips, and then people that have maybe followed along from home got excited to get out there and take a trip separately, or on their own, or join us on future trips. And so I've just always been kind of captivated by how exciting it is to inspire people in this way. And I think that travelers are naturally inclined. Christina, you mentioned this, that, we're inclined to care about the planet. I think just by nature of seeing more of something teaches you more about it and makes you appreciate it. And so I think that there's maybe like a natural home for trying to care for the planet amongst this community. So that being said, we kind of have this angle we have to take where we all know that travel is costly for the climate. And so, I don't think it's a good solution to say everyone should stay home. Like, we've been doing that for a year and we know how that's going. But it's also probably not reasonable to expect everybody to just be thoughtful and go and pay for their own carbon offsets on their own. Like, I don't think everyone's going to do that. Would be great if everybody did. And so what we've started to do is, with both of our brands, I'll talk about them at a high level, trying to bake in kind of like the common good. So you can sign up for a trip with us and it'll also be good for the planet. And that's what's led me to this concept around Wayward. So, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Now I'm happy to stop. I tend to ramble when I get excited, and I'm definitely excited to talk about this. So feel free to.
We've got an hour, so rambling and tangential thoughts are encouraged.
Great.
And I think, at this point, we may actually sort of restart the beginning of us just kind of chatting and Christina's dad's social. So just to kind of clue folks in who are just maybe logging in, and just to re-intro, we've got Jake Gafner from Lost Travel and Wayward. He's going to be talking about what he does. And honestly, at this point, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with CDR? Which I think is what's going to make this a pretty cool episode. In that we've already seen, like, there's that thread of maybe people who travel are a little bit more planet aware. For me personally, I love traveling. I've been all over, spent years abroad, and it comes with this existential guilt at this point because I know too much, and so different people are on different elements or different levels of that journey of sort of knowledge and understanding, and about their carbon footprint and how bad travel is really for the planet. in many ways.
Mhm.
And I think once you realize that, it kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it, right? It's like, oh God, what a great trip. But man, we really spewed out a whole lot of emissions. Our footprint for the year is down. And to be honest, I've gone in and offset travel before, certainly not every bit of travel that I've done. I've just finished an emissions inventory for my own business. And, I've done a couple of personal inventories for fun. And, again, I haven't offset every year of my life, but I've offset a few years. And it always, to me, feels like a bit of a shot in the dark. Just like, I think that's the number. And honestly, it feels more like a tithing, or, what did like prostitutes pay to the Catholic Church so they could still go to heaven? It sort of feels like that sort of thing, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm absolving absolutions or whatever. I'm absolving some guilt here. I don't really know if that was the right number, but I'm going to just pay some money, just take a little bit of, my cup of joy and spill some out, just to acknowledge that I did something bad. But it never really feels like a true calculation. And I know, Jake, we'll maybe get to this, that the app tracking software that you're developing is maybe provides a little bit more of a feeling of accuracy around that quantification of, well, how much am I responsible for this travel? I mean, this app might help solve some of those problems. So that's pretty cool and exciting. We also have Christina Beckman on the call it's Tomorrow's Area.
Yes.
And her internet's working, so we get to see your lovely face again.
I'm going to see how we go here.
Great. And you wanted to just give a quick plug on who you are and what Tomorrow's Air does?
Sure. Yes. I'm Christina Beckman. I'm one of the co-founders of Tomorrow's Air. We are the first collective for travel to remove carbon and permanently store it, and support the inspiration and education that's needed to help scale this activity up. It's so common for people to see these things as separate actions. You tick the box and offset, or you support some kind of organization that provides climate education. We are bringing these two pieces together, and we're very focused on direct air capture and carbon removal technologies. Over time, we may have other types of carbon removal technology within Tomorrow's Air. Right now, we are partnered with Climeworks, and so we offer travelers and travel companies a way to remove carbon dioxide and permanently store it through direct air capture, and also support inspiration and education to help scale it up. And we're putting a lot of this forward on social, on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, because a lot of climate science and climate education has sort of been hard for the average person to connect with. And so we're making a big effort to sort of bring that to the level of a regular traveler. And we see travel as having an incredible opportunity to lead for these reasons that you just said, because there is a little bit of, you have a little pang about your emissions, and it would be a tragedy to stop travel, because this is how we learn about other cultures and experience new things. And we also bring our travel dollars support local conservation and local economies. And so there is a way we can clean up, we can be part of the future we want to live in, by supporting the scale up of these technologies and still enjoy our trips. And so, and travel, that was my other main point. Travel pre-COVID, 10% of global GDP, 1.4 billion international travelers, or whatever the number was. This, when we founded Tomorrow's Air, the idea was, can we bring this collective muscle to bear on this problem of needing to remove all these legacy emissions and scaling up technology that can help us. So that is why Tomorrow's Air exists.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great overview. So I think there's some obvious synergies here. I know Jake and Christina have spoken in the past. obviously, yeah, there's some good synergies here. So I think we'll let Jake kind of keep going with his explanation of Lost and Wayward, and then we can kind of get into some of the bigger questions of, specifically, what do we see as potentially the future for Jake's companies. I think we're going to focus in on the Wayward tracking software. And how does that connect to, and how might that help to solve a couple problems in the CDR space? One being sort of a lack of general awareness. The other one being maybe a lack of capital flowing into the space. I know that lack of supply has been a major gating item. So I think there's quite a bit of demand out there, and we're hoping to help the CDR suppliers to ramp up. And I think one of the things that, keys to unlocking that additional supply will be more capital flowing into the space. And so there might be some ways that Wayward helps with that issue as well. So just some things to keep in mind as we learn a little bit more about Jake's company. So Jake, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. I'll talk a little bit. I think people are probably wondering a little bit why I'm here, which you alluded to, which is great. I'll touch briefly on Lost Travel, because that is how we ended up meeting Tomorrow's Air and then talking about air miners. So we started with Lost back in 2018. We run events for adventurous people. I'll kind of keep it high level, but it's kayaking trips, biking trips, camping trips, a lot of outdoor trips. We'll be getting into, some more motorized trips. We're big into motorcycling and off-roading and stuff like that. Right now it's all.
Who's your typical client? Sorry for jumping in on you there. But is your typical client like someone who does this all the time, or someone who's, outdoor curious, but maybe just doesn't know how to get started and wants someone to just lead them, like, show me the way. I don't want to go to REI and spend $1,000 for a camping trip. Just get me out there. How would you describe your client?
Yeah, typical. What's been great is our age range is like 17 to 75. So we've got people all over. In terms of experience, it tends to be actually in the middle of what you just described. So it's not somebody who wants to learn camping 101, but it is somebody who has done a few trips. Maybe they've done guided trips, and now they want to take that next step before they go off and plan an expedition. So our trips are unguided. There's a start and a finish. There's party and food and drinks at both ends, and people sign up, usually 15 to 30 people, and generally travel together, but they are learning. They're carrying their own gear. They're choosing where to stay, and they get the camaraderie of a guided trip without the hand holding. It's kind of what we say. And so it's a good stepping stone to someone who might want to plan a 2-week trip off in the wilderness, or really just wants to travel with like-minded people.
Very cool. So is the beer and chips, is that at the end of every day, or is that like at the end of the week you get to this point and then you get your beer and chips? You get,
actually, and there is beer at the finish line. It's at the end of the trip. Our trips are between 3 and 7 days, so it depends.
Cool.
Yeah. And so since we've started, since our first trip ever, we give 5% of our revenue back to the planet. And it's a bit like the example you used earlier, where I've always viewed this a little bit like it's just us paying a tax, right? Like, we are using the resources of the planet, and we want to help preserve it. And so what we had done traditionally is we always found a local environmental organization to contribute that to. And this is 5% of revenue. So definitely in most of our early trips, we did not turn a dime of profit, but we still paid this because I think it's important. And it helps build this connection, because we're showing people this part of the world, and then they are supporting it just by being there. So it's almost like this passive way to contribute, which has always excited me. I think that's one of the most effective ways to get people to contribute, is like, hey, come take this great trip. By the way, it will do some good for the planet. And so we've been doing that. And what I've wanted to do is kind of do something that really honed in on climate change directly. And so what, I had reached out to Tomorrow's Air after I first learned about it, and Christina and I were talking, and we're going to start taking 2.5% of that. So half of our contribution, giving it to Tomorrow's Air, to help with, direct carbon capture, which I'm really excited about. And so that has kind of led me into thinking about the Wayward side of things. Wayward's relatively new. It's a tracking software that we use on our trips. People can check it out. It's free to just download and try out. We use this on our trips because our trips are unguided. And so people tend to take their own paths, which is great to watch online. It's funny, but it's also useful as an organizer to know where people are. So we designed this for ourselves. And then back in 2020, of course, the travel industry took a big hit. Many of our trips we canceled and slowed down. So we dedicated a lot of work to Wayward, to launching that as a standalone product that people can use on their own trips and other organizers can use. So people who organize bike races or car rallies, or they're just hiking across, hiking the PCT or the AT or whatever. That's kind of Wayward in a nutshell. I'm going to show some examples because it's relevant to thinking about how we track our carbon footprint. But with Wayward, what I have been starting to think about, our current business model is actually, it's free for an individual to use. You can track your adventure and share photos. I'll show that. And then we charge organizers. So if you want to organize a trip, we charge you per participant. The organizer just covers that. And that covers the cost of the application for that event. I've been thinking about using it a bit more similar to how we just take a percentage of registrations and give that right back to the planet. Using Wayward a little bit like this Trojan horse for bringing some awareness to what the carbon footprint is of a specific trip, and helping direct some funds to the right places through that. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. What I'll say is Wayward is designed for, really any type of adventure, right? If you're hiking or biking or motorcycle, you take a flight somewhere, you want to go sailing, you can use it on any one of these trips. I'll show a couple examples here. Okay, so at a high level, I touched on most of this. I just wanted to share, a couple of data points that are useful. It's iOS and Android. What we've found with our trip, so with Lost Travel, when we run a trip, we will have our participants use Wayward, and all of their routes are shown on a single map. And then their friends and family and sponsors are back home following along, and it's great. And we see a really significant increase in website traffic to that specific page. People are following this adventure live. So think of it like you're watching your friend run a marathon, but this is digital. It captures all of that excitement on a single web page. And there's photos and stories that are being displayed. So it's actually really, really fun to follow someone's adventure like this. Since we launched it, it's been used in 36 countries. And what's great about it is Wayward runs on people's phones. So think of it a bit like a Strava or any running or biking tracking app, but it's designed for long trips. And you don't need a piece of hardware. So you don't need to buy a specific satellite GPS device to track you. You can just use it on your phone. So pretty easy to get it up and running.
So let's say my friend's taking a trip using the Wayward app. I would log in. I can log in on my desktop, and I would have a way to specifically track that individual. Like, oh, look, there they are. They're on top of this mountain.
Yep. Yeah. You could follow them. They can, they need the app. Actually, a spectator doesn't need the app. They'll just text you the link. Follow my trip on Wayward. You can follow along. You can see where they're at in real time. They can post photos. They can leave stories. Usually there's a lot of fun stuff happening on like long trips like this. And so people do follow it. They check multiple times per day. We have people who use it just to track their hikes, like day hikes, a couple hours. And they'll just share it with a couple of friends or families like, hey, this is when I'm going to be back. Here's the route that I'm doing.
And so currently, Jake, there's no carbon offset. There is no CDR. Like this is yet to happen.
Totally. Yeah. That's not, it's not part of the business model right now. It's definitely not in there. But I've been thinking a little bit more about this as we get people to start to use it, thinking about how we can leverage what we're learning on the trips to bring that awareness and those funds. So I'm just going to show two examples of what it looks like. So this is like what it would look like if you're following an individual trip. It's pretty simple. It shows your route like you would expect. People can drop, we call them check-ins. There's actually clicking noise happening on that. So you can just take a photo of something, right? This was like me with my dog when we were testing it. The trip on the left is actually recent trip I took, we went snowboarding, we flew out to Denver, did some snowboarding, drove around, pretty long trip in terms of like mileage and all that. There's a lot we want to do to build out the actual experience of a spectator, but we do have the routes people travel. We know how long they were out there. We know the distance and the speed and the altitude they were at. So we kind of have all those things that we can use to start to calculate something, which is interesting to me. So this is a solo adventure. Anyone can go just use that, and it's free to use and whatever. The current business model is that we are licensing this to other organizers. So people that organize car rallies, multiple day hiking trips with a lot of people on it. This is an example of what it can look like. The participants are using the app. They're tracking their location. Maybe there's checkpoints or there's whatever that event is. A good example, there's one coming up where it's kind of like a classic car rally and people are driving around Lake Michigan, which is right in the center of the US. It's about 1,000 miles around. And there's going to be some checkpoints that they have to hit. And it's just for fun, people pay a fee, and the organizer is going to use Wayward to help just kind of share that excitement and then get more exposure for their sponsors who are paying to sponsor the trip. And the spectators can follow along on the web. So,
and I'll just jump in just to say I like the way that you're approaching this, in that you're licensing this out first. So first comes sort of like the business case of, okay, let's get a bunch of users, let's make some revenue on this app and get people kind of hooked on it. Like, okay, there's an annual rally, I'm assuming, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of these events are recurring events, so you get them using it one year, they have a good experience, you're going to have nice repeat customers coming in there. And one of your earlier slides used the term Trojan horse, which is, I think this is the Trojan horse, this is where that aspect comes in. So the more with the story of the Trojan horse, they hid inside of it, they went into the city, but the more cities you can put those horses in, to take that analogy further, the better. And then out pops the little CDR soldiers.
Yeah.
And you've just increased your impact. Ultimately, it's how do you increase your impact? So, first you build the revenue up, you build the customer base, but in the back of your mind, the long-term plan is the CDR is gonna slide in there, and it's just gonna be part of the app. People love it for what it is, purely on the functionality basis. Never mind that it does all this good. And I think that's sort of like that's brilliant. I think that's the key, and I think that's the way that these sort of beneficial type of companies need to be thinking. That it's not about you're gonna have a very small customer base if you're trying to get people to buy purely on the on the merits of paying off their carbon debt. There's definitely a market there, but it's less of a market by a huge order of magnitude than if you have a customer base that purely loves the functionality. Oh yeah, and this thing actually results in carbon being sucked out of the air.
Totally. Yeah. And I think also Trojan horse could be kind of interpreted negatively, but like we will, of course, everyone who's using our app knows they're using it for this purpose of like tracking and sharing their trips. And, when we get to the point where we're ready to launch something or announce it, everyone will be aware of it, and it'll be great because it is just this nice benefit. And what is really great is like, even for those of us that travel a lot, even professionally, we're not traveling constantly, but it still is fun to watch somebody take on an adventure. So there's a lot of excitement in just following this, whether it's somebody sailing somewhere, they're paddling a river, or whatever. And so I'm excited to capture all of that and nurture the kind of this community of exciting adventures, and then this great side benefit. So that's where we currently stand. I just have 2 more slides where we'll kind of talk about the idea for the business model, and I definitely encourage both of you to kind of weigh in on numbers and thoughts, because this is where we're getting a little bit experimental now, but excited to dig into that. So this is at a high level, the business model concept, right? And there's like 3 players here. So the idea is, Wayward is this place where you come and share your adventures and you can follow along. And so to users, that's basically the same. So use Wayward to share your adventures. And by the way, Jeremy, we're going to assume that you run a big corporation here, Mr. CEO. The carbon footprint of your trip is covered by Jeremy Corp. That's it, right? And like maybe that is done visually with, you can think about it like an ad or it's a tagline or whatever, but that is the pitch to users. It's just awareness. Of course, we could have things in the app that kind of teach them more about that. The pitch to sponsors is, this is speculation, but it's really, to me, just advertising, but with a purpose. Like, you can do good by advertising here, and you get repeated recognition for it. Like, over and over, people following this will be aware of your brand, seeing what it's connected with. And I really do envision this. We've built GDPR, we built GDPR into the app from the ground up. We don't sell anyone's data. We don't track it. Unless they're sharing a trip, we are not tracking it, and you can do a private trip.
Sorry, Jake, you said GDPR.
Oh yeah, sorry. So GDPR is like the General Data Protection Regulations in the European Union, which basically says we're not going to harvest the data of the users and sell it. And it's definitely the trend amongst the bigger players in the industry to start to conform to this and protect people's data. We have just designed it from the very beginning. We don't collect much. And if people have a private trip, it's truly private. Like, we don't even look at it. So that in mind, I've always stayed away from advertising as a revenue model, which is definitely why we've started with organizers, because most advertising is kind of linked into like selling people's data and it's free or whatever. What I've wanted to do is package this a bit more thoughtfully. And so I don't intend on us having all kinds of sponsors. Really, I'm thinking like one big, Jeremy Corp is sponsoring this for 2022. And it's just kind of an annual or monthly fee that's packaged in that would cover all the trips that are happening on Wayfair. And there's a little bit of speculation on our side, but we will have some data and some numbers. We can come up with a fee for that. But to the sponsor, it's really this, like, hey, you want to do great for the planet. Here's a way you actually can support it, and you get this repeated recognition by way of kind of an advertising on a platform where people are climate aware, earth aware, and they're on long trips. Most great trips are 7 days or longer. Some people are doing, if you hike the Ice Age Trail, it's 70, 80 days. So people are out there for a long time, and they have a lot of followers and a lot of people getting excited about what they're doing. And so whoever would be sponsoring it would get this repeated recognition that they're there, they exist, and they're supporting a good cause. And then on the Wayward side is, we could use our algorithm to calculate the carbon footprint. So we do know the distance, we know speed. Right now, we don't collect mode of travel, but we could do some good assumptions based on speed. Is it walking speed? Paddling and hiking are generally 3 to 4 miles an hour. There's biking, which is in that mid-range. We definitely know how fast airplanes are going. So we can kind of make assumptions based on what we know. What is the carbon footprint of certain modes of travel? What do we assume they're doing? Future state, we could totally let somebody say, this was a road trip, then I was on my bike for 4 days, whatever. Mm-hmm. So the Wayward application here, and the role is, it's just this platform where we're helping kind of take industry knowledge that's pretty scientific and just convert it into a very simple, here's what this cost. It's 500 kilograms, whatever that is. So that's the business model concept. And one more slide, and then I'm happy to just jump around. This next one is looking a bit at the numbers, right? I'm going to rely on everyone in the community to like correct me and throw out things here, but through some rough research, what I've found is, so CPM is cost per milli, which is a marketing advertising term for your cost per 1,000 impressions. So if 1,000 people see your ad, average is about $3. It's totally different if you're thinking about a billboard on the side of the road or digital ads all over the place, but average is about $3. And so the idea here in the pitch to the sponsor is that you're spending $3 on digital ads. If you do this at Wayward, it's going to be $5.50. It's going to be more. There's a premium, but a good chunk of this is going straight to offsetting the carbon footprint of these trips. And I don't mean offsets in terms of purchasing offsets. I mean going direct to like direct carbon capture or whatever is actually having a direct impact in that moment, and we can communicate clearly. So that's the pitch. It's like it's not cheaper, unfortunately, but I do think there's room, and there's kind of this goodwill, and there's also this repeated good exposure for them to pay more for this level of exposure. So that's the idea. And then I just came up with one concept trip. So this is a trip. Somebody did a road trip from Madison, Wisconsin out to Sacramento. It's just under 2,000 miles road trip. And I use this math, that 33 cents per mile per passenger.
It's like they took a very straight line starting in Nebraska.
Yeah. So, well, there was Wayward's in development. This was an earlier trip. There was a little bit of a bug where it missed a couple days. So, but this one illustrates a good long road trip. So I wanted to put it up there in spite of that. We fixed that now. So if it was 33 cents per mile per passenger, this would be the cost to sponsor it, right? Like to totally offset this trip, this is what the total cost would be. And the equivalent, if we like converted that to how many impressions we would need, it's just over 100,000 impressions. Mm-hmm. So a sponsor would pay a certain dollar value, and we would have to kind of work with how many people are viewing it. Like at scale, things absolutely will work out. How many people are following along, and if this person is actively posting a lot of photos, just like you like different friends on Instagram, or people sharing things online, like this would be similar. But there's this incentive to keep going back multiple times a day because you're following somebody. Either it's just doing something great, or it's somebody that and so you're kind of going back repeatedly. And what's really interesting, just one last comment on this to me, is that I mentioned Wayward is designed for all sorts of adventures. There's a lot of trips out there that are carbon neutral. Like somebody's going to go on a kayaking trip. Maybe they'll be out for 5 days and they're paddling the whole time. They aren't going to have a direct carbon cost of their miles there. They will be getting the eyeballs. So, if I look at this directly, like maybe this seems expensive to follow one trip, but there's going to be other trips happening where there isn't a true cost to the environment, but we still kind of get that exposure. So I think we can kind of level this out. At the end of the day, the business model is, this advertising with a purpose model, and bringing in a lot of education to it in this way that it's just passive. Like you wouldn't be able to avoid it when you would log in and look at Wayward or look at the map that you're following. But it's just kind of this nice perk of why people would use the app. So at a high level, that's a lot. That's Wayward. That's this idea we have for kind of an alternate business model. I'm happy to just chat through it, take notes from you both.
Yeah, this is super cool. I mean, we haven't had an app or anything like this before, but I think the lesson there is really anything can be tied back to supporting CDR and have a climate benefit if you're thinking about it the right way. Just a quick question. I mean, maybe this is obvious to everyone else but me. How did you end up at the 119,000 impressions? What did you divide by to get to that number?
Yep. So cost CPM in the marketing world is cost per milli, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. Okay. So I just did this calculation of saying this, under this potential model, the cost per milli would be $5.50 on this chart. And so if we say, so that we're basically just marrying these two things. One is the mileage and the mode of transport down to what was the cost of carbon emitted on that trip. And then we're marrying, okay, if I want to pay to offset that, the sponsor would want something in return, which is viewers. And so I took 659 and just multiplied that by how many dollars they would have to pay and how many impressions they should get to make that comparison.
Got it. Okay.
I'm happy to keep talking about it.
Yeah, no, if they had 600, if they paid $659, wouldn't they want 659 divided by, let's call it 550 to equal this is what the amount of impressions they get if they were just paying for the impressions? I could be off.
No, you're right. So if they did 600, let's say this was the cost of this trip and they paid $659, they would expect, so dividing that by 550 is 119.
Yeah.
Okay. Times 1,000. So 1,000 impressions.
Per 1,000. Okay. I was missing the per 1,000 aspect. Okay. Yep. All right. I'm with you.
And so, every time you see an ad, that's one impression.
Yeah.
And if I see it, then that's two total.
And so with the sponsorship model, Jake, that takes the onus off the user. Like there wouldn't be a cost for the user to participate. and they get the benefit of kind of knowing that their travel could be quote unquote guilt-free.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. I wanted to ask Christina, like, I don't know, I understand the general concept of tomorrow's air. I'm just wondering how this compares to anything else you've than just general, like, okay, we're going to offset the travel. There's a lot more to this. Have you seen anything else like this?
No, there's another, no, not exactly. There's another app that I am familiar with called Adventure Junkie that has a similar kind of convening a community. They share their travel, and they follow each other, and it's cool. And they also support carbon offsetting. I think just like taking a level above this sort of individual action, one of the things that is really important in travel is to grasp that we have trillions of tons of excess emissions that we've all been, for me, this was a real like moment where I was like, I've been traveling for many years, doing so much good through my travel, right? We work with local communities and we support conservation, and the realization that all that on the ground good was being undercut by the fact of our emissions. And now I think there is this, and what Jake is making possible is the kind of this recognition of your individual contribution. And yet, in addition to that, we have this collective problem and opportunity in travel. And so tomorrow's air is kind of saying there's two things in play here. There's one, which is I'm calculating the emissions of my exact trip and I'm compensating this that I'm contributing to the emissions store right now. And there's also, how can it all come together? How can we band together and get leverage against this overarching macro problem? Because both of these things kind of need to happen. And I think it's a more linear, it's easier for people to grasp this like immediate thing, like what's visible here. I traveled from Wisconsin to California and it's this many miles and it's this much emissions and I'm going to do this thing to handle this moment. And what I love about Jake's commitment in Tomorrow's Air is it's in that participation, it's chipping in on helping scale the technology that addresses this larger problem that we all collectively have to lean in on. I mean, we have to get to gigaton carbon removal capacity, many gigatons of carbon removal capacity in the next few years. That doesn't happen this way by each of these individual. That's part of it. But the way we get that is by really everybody also kind of steps into the future us, the future we want to create. So it's not just about today and the actual trip. And I love what's here. And then, but what Jake is kind of bringing into that with Tomorrow's Air is recognizing this bigger story. And as you can see by how long it took me to say that, this is not an easy thing to talk about. And that's the opportunity for Tomorrow's Air also. And as we try and sort of add this layer into the existing conversation.
So I'm reading a little bit between the lines, Christina. I feel like you've been hinting at like our collective carbon debt a little bit, without saying it. And maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but when I think about that concept of, okay, well, we can offset what we're doing from here on forward, but that doesn't really solve the problem, right? We've got all this trash in our atmosphere and we need to figure out how to pull it out. So there's this element of, we need to go beyond offsets, right? We need to go beyond covering our footprint for the thing we're going to go do. It's now like we need to do that, and we need to 2x or 3x or 4x that. And it gets expensive, right? It gets expensive to start thinking that way. And I think we shut down like, I don't think I can afford that, particularly when we're looking at CDR based removals, which we know are not, you know, $5 a ton. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, it's a bit of a thorny issue, and it's one I did want to bring up. I mean, maybe you could give us some ideas on like on pricing if you're able to, just on like what are we looking at, and you know how easy or difficult is it at this point to obtain and you know get contracts in place for CDR based removals.
Sure. I mean, conventional carbon offsetting, like, so Tomorrow's Air is incubated by the Adventure Travel Trade Association. I work there also. And we have a program with South Pole for conventional carbon offsetting that supports nature-based solutions and also things like clean cook stoves and renewable energy. That kind of carbon offset costs between at retail like $19. Some of our businesses get $12. With neutral together with our bulk purchase, we're able to get well below that for this sort of conventional offset. For Tomorrow's Air and carbon removal via direct air capture with permanent storage, the per ton price is between $800 and $1,000. So that's why Tomorrow's Air is a collective. Yet, so because we've been focused on offsets and because we've been focused on saying we're carbon neutral, if your goal is just to say, I'm carbon neutral, you're going to look for the cheapest possible offset, and you're not going to help scale up the technologies that we need. Now, I think people are adapting their ambition, raising their ambitions to go further than just say I'm carbon neutral. People are also looking at how can I be part of this future I want to live in, which is going to require some accelerated carbon removal, and it's going to require long-lived storage of carbon dioxide. And so now you can see a different model for thinking about how much CDR you do. So when we talk with companies, in the early days of your commitment to carbon removal, you'll be spending a little bit and help because you're part of helping scale this up as the volume, as the demand increases, the price comes down, it becomes more efficient. So we expect that it's like a pie chart, and your entire carbon compensation budget, the majority of it might go to conventional offsets, and a sliver of it is going to CDR. And over time, that CDR with permanent storage amount opens up and gets bigger. So, and also that's, why when you're talking with individual travelers about offsetting with direct air capture carbon removal, for example, if they're going mile per mile and trying to compensate, it rapidly becomes something that's like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it in a different way, if you put the calculator aside and say, okay, I'm gonna conventionally carbon offset and support nature-based solutions that have so many benefits beyond just the carbon, right? All the ecosystem services that we get. There's
Sure.
lots of reasons to support that stuff. I don't want to take, we should all continue to do that, but
Sure.
do that with your calculator. And then the next thing is like, okay, how can I help be part of building demand for the technology that we know we need? It's a little bit of a different mental position.
I think that's really well put. The portfolio approach, as I like to call it, is that's the way to go, and it's what makes it all feasible. Because again, if you're trying to offset anything purely at $800 a ton, it's going to get very pricey very quickly. But there is a way to sort of find that middle path and do the nature-based offsets, the more traditional offsets at a much cheaper price. And again, those are rife with all sorts of problems, additionality, impermanence issues. So there's, the carbon, the robustness from a carbon angle is less, but the co-benefit aspect is probably greater, right? With CDR, I mean, you're purely pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, which we all know needs to happen. But you're not also protecting habitat for tree frogs, when you're pulling carbon out of the air. So there's a trade-off, and I think a portfolio approach can definitely be something that is defensible and helpful. I mean, Jake, is that how you're approaching things? Or are you thinking pure CDR? I mean, what brought you to the CDR world in your thinking about this company?
Well, I think I've always been carbon curious. I've been really curious about the alternatives out there. And I'd asked Christina this question when we first met. As a company who wants to do good, like, what is the best option right now? And one thing that either you said or I'd read somewhere is just that we didn't get into this situation through purely natural means. And so we kind of need to dig ourselves out of it through unnatural means as well. And so I'm excited about that. The reason this came to mind is because I was looking at this whole wayward possible business model. I was looking at some stats around our own platform and then others like Instagram, for example. For every post on Instagram, there's like 44 likes. So you post one photo, that gets leveraged to 44 people who then see that. So there's more engagement than there actually is posting. That's where the value is, of course. It's like an ad-based model. And so when I was thinking about this, like, it is very daunting. Everything Christina just said, it's very daunting for me to look at my own travels. This trip I just took to Denver and think about, okay, I need to offset this. It's like, it's between two parties, between me and then the carbon removal company, or however I'm going to help offset that and make myself feel good about it. Perhaps what we need to do is introduce this third player. And this third player is somebody who's also wants to do good, but also has an initiative just to raise awareness for their own product or their own company. And so by introducing a third player who is interested in the eyeballs and the excitement, that 44x, they're interested in that aspect of it. So it's not necessarily about the one person's trip, although they can definitely feel good that them doing something awesome was covered. It's actually about all of their friends and family and the general public who's following along. And so, and definitely I'm not totally sure all the numbers work out. So I would definitely encourage people to like chime in and or write us with like thoughts around this. The 33 cents per mile was a calculation I got from looking at, on a road trip, how much carbon is produced versus then the cost to offset that through CDR. So I think there could be something here by introducing another player, another aspect.
Jake, I completely agree with this. And I love how your previous slide that I think I even took a screenshot of it. It was like, you said, what did you say? To sponsors, advertising with a purpose, do some good and receive repeated recognition for it. So Tomorrow's Air has a bit of that also, right? For our company partners like you, we say, you're removing a portion of carbon dioxide. That's great. Actually, the signaling power of what you're doing is probably more meaningful at this stage than the actual amount of CO2 that you're removing and storing. And so we also have that kind of embedded thinking of like, you will be featured in this ongoing inspiration and education that helps scale this up. And I think that's so true, what you're saying here. And the app makes that, spreads that faster than as you can draw people to the app. I think it'll just get more and more powerful. And I also really think that leading with cause, I was in another conversation that was around, was talking about marketing. And it was like, it used to be the company was the hero. And then it sort of shifted to the customer as the hero. And now the cause, the purpose is the hero. And people want to buy from companies in all aspects of their lives, whether it's home products or pet products or travel, from businesses that share their values. And so I think this has, I love that about it. And I bet we're going to see kind of more and more of these opportunities for businesses to align on different platforms with causes.
Yeah.
I apologize. I have another call. I have to hop off here.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you for
much
including
for
me.
joining us, and I appreciate your input. I think we're talking a little later today, so we'll I'll look forward to that as well. Thanks so much for joining, and totally respect that you've got to go. And Jake, we'll kind of start our wrap up anyway. And I know we didn't get to dive into deep into the business models, but I think this is so great in that you're leveraging I think one of the greatest, most valuable commodities for corporates at this point, which is eyeballs. They want them and they're willing to pay for them. You're doing it for a sort of consumer or user base that probably cares about this kind of stuff. And I think the while we haven't played with the app on our phones, the core functionality that you're describing is, I think, useful. I think it's something that people would want to participate in and use, particularly, if you're going on a cool, adventurous travel trip, if you can connect this and post this up onto your other social media channels. And I think sort of the fact that you've designed this with sort of the carbon Trojan horse from day one is really what makes it outstanding. I think there's just a ton of opportunity for a business like this to do good. And in Business Model Lab, what I sort of try to keep repeating is you don't have to be the next big name in direct air capture. The businesses that thrive and maybe the ones that ultimately do the best for any given marketplace are sort of the picks and shovels businesses, the ones that help feed little bits of the ecosystem that make up CDR. And I think this is a really interesting and unique one from a sort of angle that we haven't explored before. So it's been really fun looking into it with you. And we wish you lots of success. Any words you want to leave us with, Jake? This has been super helpful. And again, as I said earlier, it'd be fun to do a retrospective in 6 to 12 months once you're sort of somewhere down the line and see how things are going and where they've gone.
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't have any words of wisdom, to leave anybody with. I would love to hear thoughts from people either in the channel or by email.
We'll have this on YouTube too. So, the comments down below are always a good option. There's Jake's contact info, so that'll make it in. Sounds like he's open to hearing from folks, and we get such an awesome caliber of people through Air Miners that who knows, you might find. Is there anything that you're looking for with this? Are investors of interest? Are employees or what resources would be useful for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So next steps for us, yes, on the investor side of things, we are currently looking for some investors, and so happy to talk with anybody or connections in that regard. Next steps with this in particular, as I mentioned, our current business model is just selling the software as a service to organizers. I want to dig into the feasibility of could we make this make sense financially for a business where they're saying, I can choose to advertise on this platform, or I could go here and there's a benefit, in making sure that all the numbers do flow through appropriately based on how much carbon is produced on trips and all of that. So if anyone is just interested in talking about that or has some tips or great resources, I've looked through things online, but I'm happy. And then if that seems to make sense, our next step will be, let's talk about this as a fundamental business model for Wayward and see if there's a sponsoring org that would like to get on board and try it out. So I'm excited about where it goes. And, for me, at the end of the day, I got excited about all this when somebody shared a Climeworks video with me. It was the first time I saw it and I was like, oh, wow, this thing is operational right now. And it does seem, I don't want to say a light at the end of the tunnel at all, but it does seem like this is the moment to really get the word out about not just Climeworks, but everything that's happening. And people, definitely in my entire lifetime, climate change has been something we're aware of, but always felt defeated in solving. Now it feels like there's just enough of the right solutions. Like if we put the attention to it, somebody will hear about it. Somebody will start to do something else to keep the ball rolling. And eventually we'll start to solve this problem. So I'm really excited about just trying to play a part in that. And anyone who wants to be involved on our side, please reach out.
Well said, Jake. Yeah, I think the knowledge of CDR needs to go viral. Your app needs to go viral. It can all sort of work together in that respect, which is a great thing. I personally, if there's an app I can simply download and throw on my screen and neutralize, or even better, my next trip somewhere, sign me up. That's a no-brainer for me, and I think for a lot of people. Particularly if I've got some big corporate company footing the bill, it even feels better to in some way. So I there's a lot of benefit. I can see low friction to people signing on, and as long as the functionality is there, it's going to be could be a great success. So we wish you luck, Jake. Thank you for spending some time with us, and we'll sign off at this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, man. Take care.